Hey guys, and welcome back to Studio Time. Today we're going to talk about my 5 new favorite plugins. When I mention 5 new favorite plugins, I'm not saying that these are brand new plugins. I'm saying they're new to me. Sometimes when you work in an elaborate template and you work in the middle of a movie, you don't want to go through installing the newest and the greatest because you're so focused on what you need to finish. So sometimes I'm actually quite late to the game when it comes to new synthesizers. So the first new synth that is absolutely fucking awesome, it's called the Knifonium. And the Knifonium is open right here. I wish I could make it bigger. And I can, but then I don't see the rest of the synth. So let's go back to 100%. It's something the way that we have zoomed in on the screen because my eyes are not so great. So I have to put a little bit more effort in what I'm seeing. So what is the Knifonium? Well, I had the pleasure back in the day when I was working with Hans on, I think it was Man of Steel, and he actually had a physical version of the Knifonium because it started as a hardware synth. And so they turned it into a plugin, the awesome boys of Plugin Alliance. And it's a really incredible sounding synth. So it looks very similar to certain things you have seen before in analog synths. It has 2 VCOs. You can choose the waveform, how the keyboard is reacting to it. Does it do glide or not? It has pulse width, saw or sine. It has pulse width modulation, in what kind of octave it takes place. So a lot of the standard functionality you would expect from an analog synth, a few envelopes, LFOs. But that in itself doesn't say anything about the sounds because it comes down to the components that are being used within the hardware synth. And we're going to be talking about the new hardware synths that I have here in a separate episode. Or software, the way that you emulate it, or you adding something really snazzy to it. So I want to play through some of these presets in the synthesizer. I haven't really started making my own sounds for this. I did a bunch, and actually on Justice League I used it a bunch. But let's go through some of the presets that you guys would get if you were to purchase something like this. Really awesome sound. Really deep basses. Let's see what else they have, like drums. Let's look at some other things. Brass. Why am I not hearing anything? Probably me. Really cool. Let's look at some more bass. So, let's see. Well, anyway, there's some really cool sounds in there, I think. And I can really see this synth being important. Let me just switch it off for a second. I could really see the synth being really important for me to create really growling, low kind of bass sounds that I used to do with Mass Effects and with my hardware boxes, and I still do them with my hardware boxes. But it's a really dirty, nasty sounding synth that is really, really great for that. I was really enthusiastic when I started playing around with the sound of it. So this synth will be part of my template moving forward. The next synth, so number 2, is the faceplant. I find this synth incredible. I mean, partly it works on waves that you can load. It does. I really have to dive into it, what you can do with it. But I went through all the presets and I was so blown away with the modulation techniques that you can do, how you can transform the sounds, the effects that are available to you. It's an incredible sounding thing. So I just want to go through various different sounds that are coming with this synth. By the way, I'm not using any effects or whatsoever. So what you're currently listening to is what comes out of the synth itself. Really, really great. So for me, when I went through a bunch of these presets, it was like, could be really, really incredible to create my own sounds. Like I said, I haven't really dived into it yet, like how the sounds are really made and what you need to do for it. I actually just came off reading an endless amount of manuals for the new hardware puppies that you see around me, which is a separate episode of Studio Time. But it's incredible, the sounds of this box, and so I have to dive into it. But for now, I just want to point it out. I will use this thing a lot, and this goes into my template to look for sounds or make my own sounds. Now, this little puppy here, I'm so enthusiastic about. So this is the Buchla Easel, and this is made by Arturia, and this is a really weird type of synth for people that are, even for people that are used to synths, because this is following the logic of Buchla, and Buchla and Moog were the two pioneers when it came to the first synthesizers and modular synthesis, whereas Buchla was coming from the west coast of America and Moog was coming from the east coast. Hence the terminology East Coast approach versus West Coast approach. So to explain in a nutshell the difference between East Coast and West Coast is East Coast Moog style is more of creating an oscillator with a huge amount of harmonics on top of it, like a saw wave or a pulse wave with pulse width, and then a filter after it with completely the knob down with the cutoff frequency and resonance to control the amount of harmonics coming out of the synthesizer. Basic premises of East Coast. West Coast barely uses filters. Primarily what is used is oscillators that modulate with one another to create more harmonics into the oscillators. And it's a very interesting concept. So if you find a filter in a West Coast type synth, a very good hardware example of that is the stuff that Make Noise makes, brilliant company from New York, I think. And obviously Buchla is that they would have a low pass filter, but that's pretty much it. So the sound of the synth is primarily made by really complex modulation of standard waveforms to create that harmonic sound that you're looking for. So this is actually a hardware box that you can buy, and they did a plug-in version of it, and it sounds absolutely phenomenal. The only downside to this particular plugin, and that's the only downside, it eats CPU like nothing else. So if you have this thing open in Cubase, that's pretty much all you can do. So the way that I use this synth is that I open it up in an empty Cubase session, usually on my laptop, and I noodle with it until I get some really crazy sounds. I turn it into audio almost as if it was a hardware synth, and then I play around with the audio. Let me play some examples of this really wonderfully designed and sounding box of Arturia. Let's see. I really love the sound of this, and this is not the place to do like a tutorial on this kind of synthesis, but basically what you see here, you see like a little sequencer here, an envelope generator here, a pulsar, which is like something that sends out control voltage at a certain rate, modulation oscillator, and that's where you basically create that typical tone And then there's all these feedback options that you have. You could, for instance, use the LFO, which is actually not called a typical LFO here, but you can use it in the audio range to start modulating these waveforms. And as you could tell, it's like it kind of reminds you of a traditional synthesizer, but then it does quite not, because it has this really interesting way of shaping the sounds. So this particular box and the Knifonium as a plugin sounds very, very close to some of these hardware boxes that I used to own, and some that I still do own. So to make sounds like this, I can do that, for instance, with the GRP A4 Syn over there, with my Erica Systems module over there, my Vostok's over there, and my Synth RX by Erica. Those are the machines that will give you this type of quality of sound if you want it, if you like that, if you go for it. It's tough to program, but it comes with really, really well designed tutorials. So for instance, if I click on how patching works, you see like a dummy patch, and then it's very well explained on the side how it works, or sound generators, for instance, filter amplifier. So that's the section that they're now focusing on, that is highlighted, and everything is being explained in detail there. It's an absolutely wonderful sounding synth, and if you do have the Arturia complete bundle, you have it, but you probably skipped by it, so that's why I wanted to point this one out, because this one is really special. The next one, ladies and gentlemen, is Native Instruments, the Massive X. So this synth is also out for quite some time, year and a half or so at least. But I never really got into it until very, very recently. It's a mega complex synth. It looks so simple, but boy, is this thing complicated. I remember having meetings with Native Instruments over the last couple of years, and they would show me demo models of this synth and what it could do. And I definitely had to scratch my head a few times how to even comprehend what you can do with this thing. I would honestly say that most of the presets when it comes with Massive X is barely scratching the surface what you actually can do with this. So I know that sound designers and complex sound designers, concept sound designers, for instance, on big Hollywood movies, love Massive X, but they have to dive really deep to create like a sound for a vehicle or a monster or whatever. But you can. It's absolutely incredible. So I see Massive X personally for myself as a really great tool to create music sound design. Obviously, I don't need the sound of an explosion in my template, but something that works like an explosion but has harmonic content in the form of music, that obviously I really love. So I haven't really gotten yet into like programming my own patches for this. I've only scratched the surface, like what this thing can do by just playing around with a few parameters. But I just wanted to go through some of these presets. I know millions of people out there already have the native complete bundle, which means you have Massive X, but maybe you guys have not given it a go, you know, a proper give it a go. So I want to play some of these sounds. That alone is just like beautiful sounds. Great. I just love the complexity of all these things. Another great one. I mean, you can wake me up in the middle of the night to play with sounds like that. I just love it. Mass Effects, absolutely incredible, wonderful synths, and I'm definitely going to use that a lot. So it is in my template, and I will dive in and just really control the programming aspect of it. So, like I said before, all these synths, I haven't really deep dove into it. They're just in my templates, and they now will become part of my day-to-day workforce. The last of the 5 that I want to show to you is the Newfangled Audio Generate synth. It's an incredible sounding synth, so I just want to dive straight in with some of the sounds. I really love the sound of these things. And so here we see a couple of things on screen that are completely new to me, what that potentially means. This tab is called Discharge, where we see chaos amount, shape amount, animate. We see a wave folder with drive, folds, mix. So I can just imagine that this is like something that is very much based on the wavetable type synth. Again, I haven't really dove into this thing as well, but I did play around a lot of these presets, and very, very inspiring synth. It comes with a bunch of presets. Let's take a random different one. So what immediately came to mind when I played around with this plugin is that you can get really easy results with some of these presets that would normally take me hours and hours to stick or to patch on like a Eurorack modular, you know, just like very experimental. It flies off the wheels like every now and then. And so there's sounds on the synth that are more traditional, what you would expect, but most of it is very experimental and really out there. So definitely something for me to play around with and synthesize on number 5 that has been added to my template. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of this Studio Time episode where I showed you 5 synths, of which I know nothing about yet. That is all to come. But I do want to point out how enthusiastic I am about them, and they're in the template moving forward, so I can start making some cool sounds with those. And that's it. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.